something that we see very regularly on Djuma, but we don't often get to be allowed the time to firstly get them on camera, because normally when we cross to them, it's normally 2 or 3 seconds before we cross, they run off. And this one's allowed us literally within 5 or 6 meters of her, and she hasn't gotten up and she hasn't run off just yet. I don't think there's anything wrong with her. I think she's just quite content in acting like the name suggests. Steenbok, meaning stone, buck, because very often when they do suspect there is some danger, they will freeze. Now, she hasn't moved since we arrived, except for using that nose to test the air, and the ears are constantly listening out. Now, she's quite relaxed with us right next to her, so and this is quite a fantastic little sighting of something we see very often, but not allowed into their space. Question from Mike: why is his nose black? Well, Mike, my general feeling is because the skin is exposed, and with the hot African sun, it's quite important for animals with exposed skin to have melanin in it to stop them from getting sun damage. Because if it was white or a very light color, she would suffer from sunburn with that exposed skin. So that is my impression. When animals, especially African mammals that are exposed to the sun, they have exposed skin with no hair, they're generally of a darker color. And something of a good example of that is giraffe with their black tongues. They're spending so much time outside in the African air, in the sun, collecting leaves and pulling the leaves off. They're exposed to the sun a lot, so they have a lot of melanin in it, and that obviously helps them not get sunburned. But that is my best educated guess to answer that question. I do believe it is to do with the sun. So she's still constantly listening out, but she is not thinking of us as danger, because she's totally relaxed with our presence now. And she's got a couple of little scuff marks on her ears, but other than that, she looks in great nick. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with her. I think she's just quite relaxed. Right, so while we watch this little steenbok in its little nesty area, I think Steph has got something else that's building something very similar.
We absolutely do. We've managed to sneak up onto a weaver who's busy weaving his nest for his lady. Now, his nest is green, and the grass actually dries out to a golden color, and quite often it's that golden color. There he goes. Now he's busy weaving the entrance, which is a very difficult thing to do because the entrance is a very high traffic zone. And the entrance almost has a lip to it. And what he's doing is he's stripping off pieces of grass and bringing them in, and then weaving it into a basket. It's a hollowed out basket, that, with the net where the eggs are laid is on the left hand side, that bulb on the left hand side, or bulge on the left hand side. Where he is now is a complete circle. And he goes off. He's obviously weaved a piece of grass in, and let's see if we can change the angle a little bit in a bit. Now you can see how he's stripped the leaves off of the branch that the nest is on. Oh, excuse me, that's my tummy busy making a noise. you can see how he stripped the leaves of the nest that he's, or the branch that his nest is on, and just at the end he's then used the branch, a forked branch, to start the weave of his nest. And he would have started it with a simple loop of grass, and then from there built it. And the top of the nest is waterproof and thickly thatched. The bottom, where the egg is well ventilated. And then there's this curved chamber and an entrance, a hanging entrance, which of course makes it a lot more difficult for predators to get into, with only a very few that have actually managed to do it. Now, weavers are pretty precocious, and I think if we play our game right, we'll probably be able to get a little bit closer to him and watch from a slightly different angle and see how he's weaving his nest. So while he's back now, so we're going to try and get a little bit closer to him and see if we can change the angle so you can see what he's doing. In the meantime, you're off to Brent with some mist, I think.
Look at that. So we're about to join Jamie in the mist. And I just wanted to show you, it looks like a massive tidal wave bearing down on us. So that mist is sitting over my destination for the morning, which is the crossings. So it's going to be quite cool, I think. So here we go. Looks like we're driving into oblivion. Fortunately, we're not, though. I quite like the misty mornings. Something a bit different. We've had some really awesome misty mornings on Safari Live. I think, going back probably close on 3 years. 3 years ago, we had the, what Pride of Lions was it? On the Arathusa airstrip, playing in the mist, chasing each other. Silas breakaways, or what are they called now? Mungen Pride. And then, of course, last year, my birthday, we had beautiful elephants in the mist, and I think also Sindile, I can't remember really, but that was quite a while ago. But we have had some awesome sightings in the mist. Oh, look at that. Not quite in the mist, but I've started noticing a huge amount of cattle egrets around the Mara recently, and spending quite a bit of time with the buffalo and elephants. There we go. So they're obviously off to find some big animals to feed around as they disturb all the insects. Now, an interesting story about the cattle egret. There he goes. Are there some elephants coming up that they might stop at? I can't see. Yes, they're like, oh, elephants. Some of them look like they might stop. No, carrying on. But so an interesting thing about the cattle egrets, its sort of colloquial name at the turn of the century was the tick bird. So, but unlike oxpeckers, they don't actually eat ticks off animals. They actually just eat whatever has been disturbed by the animals as they walk. And someone thought they ate ticks, so they were introduced into Texas, into the cattle lands, to deal with ticks on cows. Of course, they should have taken some oxpeckers and not the tick bird, who doesn't eat ticks at all. Here's a little interesting fact. Yeah, so you can find cattle egrets in certain parts of the states where they were incorrectly introduced to deal with ticks. Jeanette is wondering, is the mist coming from the Mara River? Not necessarily, Jeanette. What is happening here is that there's a big temperature difference between the ground temperature and the air temperature. Now, at this time of the year, these misty mornings can be quite common in the Mara. So it's not uncommon at all, especially after you get a really hot day like we did yesterday, and then a very cold night like we did last night. So it's a difference between the ground and the air temperature that's causing the mist. But it is beautiful. You can see we're still sort of heading straight towards it. Not sure how far Jamie is in it. But so earlier this morning, it was all the way up here as well. But as the day gets warmer, that water vapor is burnt off by the heat of the sun. Oh, quickly before we go back, there's a lovely little newborn impala by the looks of things. And it's just with Mom, so it could be very, very new. Let's have a quick look at it. Hello, cutie. Oh, so sweet. And it is quite a wonderful thing that we see newborn impala all year round here in the Mara. Mom looks like she's heading to try and find the rest of the herd that hangs about here. It always amazes me how agile and how quick a baby impala can run so soon after birth. And it looks like they're going to head into the crotons, obviously where the rest of the herd must be hiding. So while they do that and we continue into our wall of white, let's go back to Steph and that weaver's nest.
Now we've gotten a little bit closer now to this weaver's nest, as you can see, and you can see where the weaver was working on that entrance, and just have a look at how well weaved the entrance of this nest is. And as I was mentioning, on the left hand side, that well ventilated bulge, and on that sort of flimsy platform, the eggs will be laid, and they're round eggs so that they always fall to the bottom of that little basket. And just have a look how thick the weave is on top to give it the waterproofness that it needs. Very thick grass mat. Awesome, eh? Now, William, you'd like to know how long it takes the weaver to build this nest. Not long, actually, William. It'll take him, I want to say, a couple of days. It depends on the bird itself. But what's more important is that this bird is building this nest to entice a female to mate with him and lay her eggs in his nest. And if the nest doesn't meet her specifications, she'll rip it out of the tree and destroy it, and he'll have to start and build a whole new one. And there are some cases of some weavers building up to 50 nests in one season before they get it right, and where his female will be able to say, this is the right place for us to have a home. And I'm hoping that's not the case with this poor chap. It looks like he's been pretty busy with that. But just have a look at that fantastic design. Now, Christy, you'd like to know what would happen if a human messes with a bird's nest. That's quite an interesting question, Christy. You know, I've always been taught don't fiddle around with birds' nests. They contain lice and the bird will never come back. And if there's any eggs or babies inside there, you're dooming the babies. And, you know, you got to take that sort of wisdom. While you've got to test that sort of wisdom as a young man, I think you've also got to try and figure out where that comes from. It definitely is wisdom of a sort. Birds can smell, and so they definitely will be able to smell a foreign. If you've been tampering with a nest, they'll be able to smell a foreign smell, and that might be quite off-putting. You could also disturb the structure of the nest, and my feeling is that birds are actually so well designed to their nesting structures and their nesting behavior that a female that has a nest that's not quite perfect will take that as a defect in the male, and she might move off. In which case, a perfectly suited male to her, or the only or the strongest male in that area, won't get the chance to mate to that female, and therefore the strongest genes are not passed down to the next generation. And so by altering the nest slightly, you might actually alter the perception that that female has of that male bird, and therefore doom the next generation of youngsters. And for that reason, I'd say that the wisdom holds true that I was taught and that I'm trying to impart on you. And that it's best just to leave the nests alone, and best just to leave this weaver bird doing what he's doing, even if you think he's making a mistake or it's in a slightly wrong area. It's supposed to be like that. They have evolved down these lines where females choose mates based on, in this particular case, how well he designs his nest and how suited he is to overcoming whatever environmental challenges there are in this particular area currently. And so, you know, don't mess with some nests, I think, is probably the best way forward. Now, I can hear this male. He's still in the area. He's busy shouting at us to move on so that he can come finish his nesting behavior. Let's give him a little bit of space and see if he comes back. He will absolutely come back. We haven't scared him off by no means. The weavers are very precocious birds, and I have no doubt that when we reach a certain event horizon, a distance away from where he feels comfortable, he'll no doubt come back and start to eat. He's actually in the tree. I think if we stand here, we'll probably see him come down and inspect his nest. Let's see where he is. I think that's him at the top of the tree there. Yeah, that's him. He's right at the top of the tree against the skyline. It is a very grey, flat sky, so just excuse us if we can't get the picture perfect. But there you can see it's a bright yellow bird with a black head. The masked weaver, getting the name from that black face mask. I'm not very good with weavers this time of the year. Which one it is? Alright, now from birds singing in top of the tree there, enticing his mate to him and building her a nice house, we're going to be going over to Ralph, who's managed to find something eventually this morning.
Right, folks, the stripy stripes. We've managed to spot a couple of zebra. Now look at those nice fat bellies of theirs. Remembering, like horses and donkeys, you'll generally find that even if the feed or the graze is of substandard quality, zebra will generally be bloated like that regardless, because of that gas that is produced from the fermentation process of their digestive system. You can generally hear it escaping when they run off, as you do with horses and donkeys too. Always nice to see a zebra, they're so photogenic. Alright, that was a fleeting little encounter. We're going to continue towards Chitwa Dam. We've spotted a couple of wildebeest on the way through. Now we spotted these zebra, so it hasn't been all quiet. It's still nice and cool. It's actually a lovely morning. We haven't had the most amazing drive in terms of finding things, but nonetheless, maybe we'll keep the best for last. I didn't do it asking if all zebra have the black down the center of their tail. Pretty much. They're not all exactly the same, but mostly in general, yes, I didn't do it. It is one of those things that is quite similar in all especially the Birchall zebra. They're quite similar with that nice line coming down. Having said that, there are exceptions to the rule, as always, and we will have different colored ones as well. Right, there is an update that there have been some wild dogs spotted, but they're not in our particular area at the moment. So we're still going to go and check out Chitwa Dam, and then I will try and get an update as to where the wild dogs have been seen and are moving. You know how wild dogs are. They can generally be in one area now, and within 10 minutes they could be 10 kilometers away. They can move like lightning. And they generally do, especially on a nice cool morning like this. I'm sure that they will be on the move, on the hunt. And they can sometimes, depending on the size of the pack, they can even kill 2 to 3 animals a day. So always fantastic to follow wild dogs, because there's always going to be action, but it's difficult to keep up with them, especially once they go through blocks. So I'm driving towards Chitwa Dam to see what we can find down there, and at the same time Brent is driving in the mist. Hello!
Well, you're joining us as we're about to enter the mist, and it reminds me, well, if you're a rocker out there, you might know the band, the Pixies, and it reminds me of one of my favorite Pixies songs, which is called Into the White, and that's exactly what we're doing. I think they probably wrote it about snow, being from the US, where there is, for us out here in Africa, snow is not so common. Mists we see from time to time, so into the white we go. Now, it's always quite funny when you drive into thick mist. You get the tiniest little water droplets forming on your eyelashes. Quite ticklish. Oh, I see some vehicles just on the edge of the mist, and I can actually feel the temperature dropping considerably as I get further into the mist. The sun's starting to get blocked out. You can actually see it getting a bit darker around us. Now, who knows? Maybe we'll find some lions hunting in the mist. Right on the What an absolutely stunning morning so far. There we go. I just want to see what those vehicles are looking at. Are the zebra going to attempt to cross in the mist? I think it would actually be a good plan. If I was a zebra, I'd be crossing much earlier. I wouldn't wait for it to get warm. I'd want to cross when it was as cold as possible. So the crocodiles are as... Well, what do I see over there? Just hang on, let me just get round. As not active as possible. I think I see a big cat. I'm just going to get us into a good spot. It looks like lions, but they are quite far away. Hold on. I said we're going to find the Paradise Pride today. Hi, Kobe, who's 15 years old. Nice to have you on the safari with us, Kobe. Oh, it's so thick down there. Kobe would like to know, does the mist affect any of the predator or prey's vision? Not really, but it affects it as the same way it'll affect ours. You can't see as far. But if anything, it probably aids the predators. They'll be able to hunt quite nicely in mist with that little bit of extra cover. Let's have a look what we've got. What do we have? I'm hoping... I thought we might be able to have a better view from down here. Let's just slide forward. Oh dear. Oh, there we go. Perfect timing. There's a line coming down towards the water, and there's a very big crocodile there. There's a big crocodile just over there where that lioness, if she heads down for a drink there, it could be a little bit risky. She could just be heading to the shade. Now, lions really don't like crocodiles. Actually looks like a sub-adult boy. Oh, it looks like a young boy. A member of the Paradise Pride, no doubt. Full-bellied. Now, young lion, I suggest you just pop yourself down there and don't wander any further down. Yeah, well, we're going to keep an eye on what he's doing. While we do that, let's zoot back down into the mist with Jamie and some buffalo.
The mist has cleared, but I feel as though its effects are still being felt. I don't know what it is. There's something in the air today that's just upsetting everything. I drove up to this herd of buffalo and they've all panicked, or they had a little bit of a panic. Now they're all grouped together facing me, staring at me. It's actually mildly intimidating to be the subject of such intense glances. They all galloped round, they went completely crazy for a second, scared the elephants. The elephants have all gone running off. I guess the mist is affecting them more than we first realized, because everything is on edge. Could easily be that there's lions somewhere around here, and that this poor buffalo herd found itself being chased last night in the mist. But they really, hello, yes, I know, they're getting closer and closer to us. I don't quite know what the end point is here. I'm not worried about them charging us, by the way. I've been chased by 1 or 2 female buffalo, but usually when they're being chased by lions or predators at the same time, and they just decide that somehow I'm responsible. Yes, hello. I don't quite know. I don't have any money. I don't have your money. Promise. It wasn't me, it was the other guy. Goodness gracious. I heard of about, I exaggerated earlier, I said 1,000. It's probably more like 500 or so. Ooh, that one male. You're looking at me like you've never seen a car before, or a person. I know that's not true. I know I've driven past this herd at least once. It's quite a popular area, this. So it's not like they're right on the Tanzanian border where sometimes the animals haven't seen people. I didn't do it. You want to know if we've perhaps got something stuck in the front of our vehicle that they are all staring at. I wish I could have thought of a clever retort to that. But I think it's gone on too long now. And now I can't think of anything. Unless somebody's put a post-it note on my front of a vehicle. Insulting buffalo. Goodness gracious. What's bizarre about it is some of them are perfectly relaxed and not even vaguely interested in us, and the rest of them are odd. TA, you want to know what the difference is between American and African buffalo. Okay, so African buffalo we would refer to as the Cape buffalo. So obviously it makes sense that the biggest difference is actually in terms of where they live. Now that sounds like a really basic, stupid thing to say. I'm not being patronizing. They have to deal with an entirely different set of predators. Now when you talk about the American buffalo, I'm assuming you're talking about the American bison. It falls into a completely separate genus. So it is totally separate, and I think if you go far enough back you'll find, I don't even think they would have a common ancestor. Well, I suppose if you go far enough back they must have had a common ancestor, but they're not closely related at all. Now in terms of size, if I'm not very much mistaken, a bison can weigh all the way up to 1,000 kilograms, so over 2,000 pounds. They're about the same size, on average. I feel like I've got such a rapt audience, my goodness. Nobody's listened to me like this in years. Maybe I should tell them a story, like we did yesterday. Maybe they heard about the story and they're waiting eagerly for the next installment. But, much like the buffalo here, bison of course are herbivores, and they will eat grasses and sedges, just like these guys. And while I'm not sure of the exact evolution of the bovine family, I believe that the bison and the African buffalo diverged a very long time ago. The Cape buffalo, looking probably at about 10 million years or so. So distantly related. Okay, I'm starting to feel a little bit awkward. I feel really, truly under scrutiny. I think perhaps I'm going to move on, leave these buffalo alone, and send you across to Rolf, who has one of Kirsty's favorite birds.
Yes, folks, apparently I've just learned this. These are Kirsten's favorite birds, the white-faced whistling ducks, a whole flock of them. Now, apologies for that wire there, but that's the electric wire that's going around Chitwa Lodge, and that's just to keep the elephants out from coming through and destroying the lodge. And there's a young bull nyala having a drink. There were a couple of them just off to the right a minute ago. Oh, there they are. They're having a bit of a face-off, practicing their sparring. They've also been digging in the mud, putting some mud on their horns, practicing that too. All in the name of practice and fun. That's how we start. And then just off to the left here, we've got the little baby hippo that's fast asleep on mommy's back. Very adorable there. And that baby looks like he's having a mid-morning snooze. Kirsten says it looks like it's smiling. Yes, absolutely. Looks very happy, hey? Happy with mom. Content as. And if we have a look slightly over the pan there, we've got our elusive flat dog, as we call them. The crocodile, Nile crocodile, showing himself. It's nice when we can see them. When we can't, that we worry. Crocodiles generally feed mostly on catfish. It's the biggest part of their diet. Right, folks, we are just going to sit here a little while longer with these white-faced whistling ducks foraging on the edges of the pan. But we're going to continue on shortly because I do have some news of those wild dogs, so I'm going to see if I can catch up with them. In the meantime, let's cross back to Brent, who I think is still trying to make his way in the mist.
Well, we have found what we were looking for this morning, which was zebras close to the Mara River. And you can see the mist behind them. It's slowly dissipating as the heat of the day starts taking over. Now, we just parked trying to see which direction they're going to go, which crossing they're going to aim for. And I'm pretty sure at some point this morning, this herd of zebras is probably 150 to 200 or so. We'll try across the Mara River. So I'm going to just stick with them and keep a close eye on where they're going. At the moment, some of the lead zebras are heading towards the main crossings, but that's where the Paradise Pride are lying in ambush. So we could be in for a very exciting morning down by the Mara River. You can hear the river behind us. Now, Tory Boy is wondering, how do animals act in a reserve to animals outside the reserve? Well, it all just depends on where that you are. In certain areas and outside of the reserve here, the animals act pretty much the same as they would in the reserve, and but in other areas where they're heavily persecuted, they become quite secretive, and they do lots of ducking and diving and running, and they don't like seeing cars or people. whether, as you can see, the animals in a reserve where there's no external pressure, there's no one trying to hunt them or eat them, are very, very relaxed. Now you can see they're sort of going off in dribs and drabs towards main south. Oh, little zebra argument. Oh, there we go. You take that. I'll bite you back. Zebras. Oh. So I want to see if the main body follows those dribs and drabs that are heading up towards main crossing before we decide to leave Dusty Crossing where we're sitting at the moment. And what have we got in the distance there? I'm just seeing if there's anything else. There are some topi around. They might also want to cross if the zebra decide to cross. Taking on that sort of, if there's more of us, I'm less likely the one to be eaten. Now, often after these misty mornings, the sun comes down with a vengeance. And I think it's going to be one of those really, really hot days today. Well, hot for the Mara, which is probably quite pleasant if you're at Djuma. I had chatting to James yesterday, and he says, no, summer has arrived in the Lowveld. So it's properly warm in the Lowveld at the moment. But of course, we're sitting probably 1,000 meters higher than they are. So on average, it's much cooler all year round, even though we're right on the equator. Ooh, we're going to stick with these zebras a bit longer, see where they head to. But it sounds like Steph is taking a page out of my quiz book. I'm very excited to hear what quiz he's got for you.
I don't quite know what to say to Brent on that, but we definitely are going to pitch a question to you all this morning, because I don't really know what the answer to this is. So it's a mystery for me as well, which is unlike my friend Leo Smith, who always has an answer to whatever he's busy telling you about. For me, I don't know what has happened here, but I am willing to work through it with you over the rest of this particular drive. What we have here is we've got an egg that's been broken. The yolk of the egg is lying adjacent to the egg. And the question that I have for you is this: what broke this egg but didn't feed on the yolk? That's the first question. The second question is, what bird does this beautiful egg come from? Just have a look at the speckles on that egg. Now, just done fairly recently. The yolk is still fresh. And you can see there, let's give you some size scale. There's my thumbnail, and you can use one of your fingers as a scale for looking at it. It is an egg with a taper to it, and so most likely not a whole nesting bird. It would be a bird either nesting on the floor or nesting on a platform nest, and those speckles should help you find it. So please send in your answers to those two questions. Why was this egg broken and not fed upon? It was done during the day, so if I had to give you a time frame, this yolk is still very fresh. So it was done recently, now, in the last couple of minutes. And what bird was this? Now, I'll try and work through some... Now, Backdoor Bubba Brown, you've decided to come right off the back by saying it's a woodpecker egg. I'm not too sure what egg it is, to be honest with you. It might be a woodpecker egg. The difference with this is that there's no trees here, and if I have a look up and around, we're not sitting close to any trees that have got any cavities in, which woodpeckers nest in cavities in trees. So for this egg to get here, it would have had to have been carried here. If it was carried here by a predator, the predator would have eaten the yolk in the egg. And so this egg has been discarded here And the key to this particular thing is the yolk was not eaten, which is a very, very highly nutritious part of the egg. So what would discard an egg and not care about the contents? Now, let's think a little bit about where we are so that I can help get to an answer. No. Consulting detective, you've just said that it could be an angry cuckoo, and I think that you're actually on the right track there. If I were to gather exactly the evidence that I'm being led to right now, the answer to the first question about who did it, I think, is very close to what you are assuming there. So let's talk about things that don't use the yolk. Cuckoos, absolutely, and I think that this is probably the right choice there, consulting detective. The fact that a cuckoo has discarded this egg from a nest, violently expelling it, and the key here would be to find out where, unless this egg was carried here by something smaller and then opened up and then disturbed by us walking up. So what we've got here is we've got most likely a cuckoo or a small predator that has taken an egg out of a nest here somewhere and brought it out onto the sand. I'm just trying to see where this could have come from. The most likely place is here, actually. This thicket. The answer that I'm not going to be able to give you at the moment is what bird's nest this actually comes from, because I'm not too sure. These speckled eggs, a lot of birds speckle their eggs. And the key would be to try and find where this came from. Now, for that egg to have been violently expelled by a cuckoo, it would have been the only real place is like here. Now, Megan, you come up with an interesting answer. Could it be a snake? We do have egg eaters here. Egg eaters will coil around a nest of eggs and will swallow the eggs and then discard the egg casing a little bit later, and we could have come along and disturbed this egg eater. They tend to have ground nesting birds as their prey items. Now, why I say it's a ground nesting bird, have a look at the natural inclination for this egg to rotate around its small axis and therefore stay in a cup. So ground nesting birds that have camouflage on their eggs are usually tapered, just like this, as are platform. Sorry, Kirsty, would you just repeat Morning Glory's answer? A thickney egg. Morning Glory, you say it's a thickney egg. Yeah, or a courser. So one of the eggs or one of the birds that are on the ground in these sandy patches absolutely could be a thickney or a courser. However, I think that they're a little bit more speckled than that. My brain wants to say that one of the thickneys or the coursers will have a slightly more camouflaged egg than this, something a bit more along those lines, that has probably has a darker base. I think this is going to be a proper riddle to try and find out what egg this is. As I said before, I don't know. So there's now another size comparison for you. Let me put my thumb there. Let's give you some more to the thick end of the egg. Amika, you're only 8 years old and you're asking a nice question. If the egg is brightly colored, does that mean that the bird will be brightly colored as well? Mika, that's not necessarily the case. The eggs are generally a form of a particular function. So when an egg is speckled or colored or cryptically colored, as it is in this particular case, it's because the parents of the egg, of the baby bird, want to keep the egg hidden somewhere. And the round eggs, or the rounder an egg, the more likely it is to be in a cavity of a tree or high up in the top of a branch. The more tapered an egg, the more likely it is to be on the side of a cliff or on a place where the egg can't roll anywhere except around its own axis. So it's the shape and the color of the egg has got nothing to do with the shape and the color of the baby. it's got everything to do with just keeping the egg in place and keeping it hidden from view. But that was a very nice question. What I'd like you to go and do, if you can, if you've got access to the internet, is go and research fork-tailed. So fork is in a dinner fork, tailed drongo, D-R-O-N-G-O. Did I get that right? Drongo, D-R-O-N-G-O. And have a look at how the difference in color from that bird to its egg is very, very different, and you'll see what I'm talking about there. So fork-tailed drongo is about the best example of that answer that I'm giving you right now for you. So I still don't know what this is, and why it was lying here and why it is broken with its yolk out there. I want to say the most likely case is probably the fact that it was a cuckoo, except that I can't actually find a nest here anyway. I'm busy looking to see if we can find anything here on the ground which might lead us to something being kicked up here. It's not impossible to say that the egg was just lying around on the stones. If you come and stand over here, let me move this rather than standing over here. Let me put this against an embankment here and see how amazingly camouflaged that actually is in this particular environment. I mean, it's not massively camouflaged, but it definitely isn't highly visible. Could it have been brought here by something that was trying to come into the open to eat it? Absolutely. So stolen from a nest and then brought it here? I don't think we have enough clues. Tracks here. That would give me another clue. But nothing that leads me to believe that it was a genet or a mongoose bringing it out here into the open to use this rock perhaps to break the egg open. I don't know. A riddle. And then of course, where does the egg come from if it doesn't come from? Normally you associate cuckoos kicking eggs out of nests similar to how they would attack that weaver that we were watching a little bit earlier. The eggs normally lie on the floor directly below the nests of the host birds. They don't carry them anywhere. We might be looking at a compounded problem here where we've got that having happened, the egg didn't break because of the fact that the grass saved the egg from being broken, and the egg was then picked up by another organism, another animal, and brought out onto the sand, and then we disturbed them. And I think that is precisely what has happened. All right, so I'm going to leave you with that riddle. Let's see if we can get any more answers from anyone out there and see if that can work. We're going to be sending you back over to Brent.
Well, I'm still with the zebras, and I've moved from the main group to the sort of front runners, but I can still keep an eye on where the main group is. And it seems like they're walking straight past main south for now, which is probably not a bad idea, considering the fact that there are lions right on the other side. So you can see that car in the distance there, that's where the lions are, but on the other side of the river. And these forerunning zebras are not heading down towards the crossing at all. So peaceful down here by the river today. We had some. It's still coming. I wonder if the zebras are going to spot the lions early this time. They might try cross at main north. Nick is wondering, will zebra fight with another horse or antelope species? Well, there aren't any other indigenous horse species in these parts. The only other indigenous horse species in Africa is the wild ass, and that only occurs far north in the Sahara. And so, and fighting with other antelope species, there's no real need. You can see they're going past some buffalo there. There's no real need for them to ever fight with other antelope species. I have seen them kick a wildebeest before, but I think that's in the pandemonium of the crossing or at waterhole drinking. But generally, I would say they wouldn't attack other antelope species. Now, it's always interesting keeping an eye on these herds of zebras, or any herds around the crossings, and seeing what might build them up to a crossing. Oh, look, there's some baby warthogs a little bit to the left there, Arch. A little bit further left, I think the babies were from those ones. There they are. Hello, little pigs. Little piggies. Sampa is wondering, how good is zebra's eyesight? It's pretty good. And again, a lot of animals' eyesight here is not really designed for detail, but movement. So if they see something moving, the animals that have eyes designed for detail, like us and monkeys and stuff, it's because we eat lots of fruit and we need to know the color of things. Whereas if you eat grass, it's pretty much all green or yellow. So their eyes are very much more designed for picking up on movement and shapes that seem out of place. So like a lion or a leopard or any potential threat, especially if there's a little flick of the ear and stuff like that. I'm trying to see, are there others? Oh, yeah, maybe my binoculars. Okay, these guys are heading off there. I want to go see what the main body of the herd is doing. Down towards Dusty Crossing again. And it is now warm. I keep forgetting to take my jacket off, but suddenly the temperature has definitely risen quite considerably in the last little while. And I saw some movement around with the main herd. I was wondering if they were going to maybe try head down towards Dusty Crossing. Jealous because Rolf has found my favorite animal.
Right, folks. So we didn't manage to find Tingana, but we have managed to find a pack of painted dogs. Painted dogs, wild dogs, as the two different names that people do give them. Locally, we will call them wild dogs, or madas, is the local nickname. But I do know that in some places they call them painted dogs. Now there's about 10 individuals in the area. They're scattered around a little bit. They were on the move and they've all gone to ground now. And there's a couple of game viewers with us because this is obviously a very exciting sighting. And now remember that we are open to the Kruger National Park, so these animals can come and go as they please, and which is very exciting for us because sometimes they come through our concession of the reserve, which is what has happened this morning. So it seems they've been on the move and now they're taking a little bit of a rest. Some lying up in the shade, even though mostly we are in the shade of the clouds anyway. Yeah, those massive ears, eh? Fantastic for listening out. Comment coming through from Octo Girly. I don't think I've ever seen wild dogs lying down. It's not a common sight. Excuse me, it's not a common sight, is it? Wild dogs are generally on the move and they very rarely actually take to ground and rest. Nick asking a question, do painted dogs bark or howl? They've got more like a yelp, and there's yelps and squeals. There's little squeals that we did hear there, very high pitch. And they've also got the hoo call, we call it. Hoo call, because it is like a hoo, hoo, almost like an owl sound. It's very contact calling each other. So, no, they don't bark per se, or howl. One's got a bit of an itchy bum there. But wild dogs, they range between about 20 and 30 kilograms, so not particularly heavy animals, and they are made purely for speed and endurance. They're not as fast as cheetah per se, so they're not totally designed for speed as such, but they are a mixture between speed and endurance. And they can have massive litters of pups, between 2 and 22 pups in a litter, so quite a lot. And they live for about 12, 13 years old, as would your normal domestic dog. Similar age to that of a dog a similar size. That's a good age, 12, 13 years old. And lovely that they've graced us with their presence. Now, a pack this size can eat a lot of meat, and they can go through 2 to 3 impala a day. So they will hunt daily, this pack, and you wonder if they've already killed and fed this morning. It's quite possible. It's not a very enjoyable sight to see when they do actually kill something. They're not animals like the cats, the lions and leopard that go for the throat and go for the kill. They are not as friendly in the kill, if I can say. Ellie Belly asking the question if wild dogs would mate with stray dogs or domestic dogs. I think it's possible, but I think the behavior of these wild dogs is quite aggressive, and I don't know if a domestic dog would be able to fit in with their behavior. I think there would be conflict, and I think that the stray dog would probably be in a bit of trouble, because generally if they're not from the pack, it's quite difficult. They don't really take likely to outsiders. So my impression is that if they had to come across a stray dog, they would probably kill it or run away from it. But I don't think that there would be enough interaction for them to have time to actually mate or breed. But it is an interesting question. It's probably possible if there were some isolated wild dogs, they could possibly breed with domestic dogs, but I do think that you would have a sterile offspring. But it is a good question. I'm not 100% sure. I just believe that from their behavior, I think it would be very difficult for them to accept a domestic or stray dog. TA asking a good question there as well. Why do wild dogs smell so badly? For me, it's a lot to do with the amount of food that they eat and the amount of meat that they get into contact with and blood, and it's a little bit to do with that sort of rotting meat and blood. But also, like your domestic dogs, we like to wash our dogs because they do start to stink, and if you leave your domestic dog for long enough, he would start to stink quite heavily as well. And it's quite natural. That is their natural smells. They also do have anal glands, which, that dog there, yes, I said he had an itchy bum, but he was probably, they do get a bit of an irritation around that anal gland, and that it is also for scent marking, and domestic dogs have this as well. Now, this assists in putting their smell around, and they're gregarious animals. They do need to live together. They live in packs. So it's important for them to keep these smells, and we constantly trying to get rid of it. It's one of the reasons why when you do wash a dog, immediately it runs outside and gets as dirty as possible, because it probably thinks that nice perfumed shampoo that we've put on it, in his mind, that stinks. And he wants to get his natural smells back, because that's normal between dogs. And their nose is sometimes 300 times stronger than ours in terms of the hounds. So you must imagine the strength of the smell coming through there. Nancy asking the question, what is the major source of death with wild dogs? Nancy, I would say mostly is from lions. Lions, hyena, if they find a den, they will kill all the pups, and a very high mortality rate. Now look at this, guys. This is a little bit of group bonding here, as you do with domestic dogs. As soon as one dog goes and pees on a pole, they all go and stand in line and pee on the same spot. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if they all come and pee on the same spot. They are checking who's who in the zoo, the status of everybody in the social structure. There I say again, having a scratch on the bottom, but that mostly to do with that anal gland. Can become quite irritating, and they do need to milk it per se, and they're all urinating on the same spot. So very lovely social gregarious behavior going on here. Constant touching, little whining. This is all constantly re-establishing their social place within the pack. And that's why, folks, at home we have our domestic dogs. If we keep a domestic dog on its own, we are taking it away from its natural sort of a way of being, and that is in groups. So when one dog is on its own, it starts to exhibit weird behavior, because it's not allowed to be in a group as they are instinctively and naturally in the wild. Atomic X asking the question, Can wild dogs use their ears like bat-eared fox do? Yes, absolutely. They are almost like satellite dishes. They are reining in the signals, the sounds coming through the bush, but a bat-eared fox using it predominantly to pick up on small things under the ground, insects and little rodents possibly, whereas wild dogs, they're using that to pick up on sounds of game, antelope moving through the thickets. So it is a very similar use, however it's for a different prey. And you'll see bat-eared foxes directing those ears predominantly at the ground, whereas wild dogs directing it normally more horizontally towards picking up if there's lions in the area, and mostly to do with prey. So, but yes, very similar in size in comparison to the body. Massive ears. So they'll be hunting mostly with sight and ears. TA asking the question, is it the alpha pair that mate, or are they all allowed to mate? It's generally, there is that very strong social structure, and they will have an alpha pair, and you will have subordinates, females, that will also come into heat, and that will normally get mated with by the alpha male, but it is very structured. Very, very structured, and they keep to that, and the youngsters will also be kept in line according to that very structured approach, the alpha pair. So fascinating to watch gregarious animals like this, and they constantly reaffirm those bonds by grooming, touching each other, nuzzling, calling, almost constant greetings. And it goes right through to where when you come home, I mean, you can go leave your house for 5 minutes and you come back, you open your gate and your dog greets you as if you have been away for a month. It's almost identical. And there, that one turning over, very relaxed, but that greeting is constant re-establishment of the bond. So it's not just that he's feeling like saying hello all over again. Dean asking the question, is it true that they have a high kill rate? Absolutely. Once wild dogs pick out a prey and head out on the hunt on that animal, the chances are excellent that they will kill it. So it's probably an 80 to 90% success rate, and it's only your older wily animals that generally have some tactics to get away. And I was watching a Nyala bull which did just that. I told the story a little while ago, but he got cornered in some water, and he eventually tired the wild dogs out, and they left him in the water. But generally, once they pick out a prey, his minutes or seconds are numbered, because they will generally have a leader who chases but very hard behind the prey, whether it's an impala or whatever antelope it might be, and he chases hard up behind it. And once he loses a little bit of steam, it would be the next that takes over. So it's almost wolf-like in the way that they do hunt, and so they keep the chase up at maximum speed throughout. Alright folks, so we're going to continue sitting here with these wild dogs. It's too precious to leave, but in the meantime, let's cross over to Steph, who I'm not sure exactly what he has, but I'm sure it's very interesting nonetheless.
Well, I've got a surprise for you, something that I've been looking forward to showing you for quite some time, and something that James Richards has asked for as well. The jumping beans from the tamboti seeds. They've started to jump. They're not going to jump for very long. They jump for a couple of days, 5 to 7 days or so at most, and then they're done. And I'm sitting in a field of husked tamboti seeds, and if we just look very carefully, we will see one of them jump. Now there's one here. They jump because every one of these seeds is infected with a caterpillar of a particular moth. And you might know, let's see if they jump. Now, of course, because I want to show. There we go. Did you see it jump? Now they jerk in these motions, which causes the seeds to jump. There we go. It jumped off my hand. How cool was that? And put him back again. They jerk. I don't know what they do. I think it is because it creates a disturbance. And as they're feeding on the tamboti seed. There he's jumping there. They're creating this massive amount of energy, which then causes the seed to jump around. Yes, that is actually quite amazing. Eh? I mean, why? It needs to metamorphosize. Surely eating the seed of one of these tamboti seeds wouldn't be enough to give you... Isn't that incredible? Come on, jump again. And all around this tree, there you go. That's actually pretty cool. All around this tree, I'm just hearing all the soil shifting as all the seeds are jumping around. And as I'm busy looking around, every now and again one jumps and does its thing. I'm very glad I got to show that to you, to be honest with you. I've been looking forward to it for quite some time. So that's the jumping bean from the tamboti seed, and the moth caterpillar that infests it. You back off to those wild dog with Ralph.
So folks, from jumping beans to flat dogs. I was talking about flat dogs earlier at the Chitwa pan, but these are real flat dogs, not crocodiles. And they're nicely positioned up in the shade, even though away from the trees. We're still in the shade with these clouds around, but they are totally relaxed. Ellie Belly asking the question, do wild dogs live in underground dens? Ellie Belly, they don't live in underground dens, but they will use underground dens, especially when they have pups. So they will definitely use, very similar to that of hyenas and sometimes lion. One of their favorites is a termite mound where an aardvark has made a big hole, and they'll also go in there into the chamber at the bottom. It needs to be very quiet in there and a nice secluded spot, and then that is what they will use for the den site. And obviously with those young when they're very young, they will remain at that den site, and then that's when they're very vulnerable to attack from lions and hyena. So the site needs to be well chosen, and the pack needs to be on guard. But that is when they have a high mortality rate, is around the den site, especially if lions pick up on that. They will race to go and climb in and kill as many pups as they can, if not all of them, and any adults they can too, because it's all competition. Predators don't like other predators around, regardless of what kind. Caracal won't like jackals, jackals won't like hyena, hyena don't like lions, lions don't like wild dogs, and the same goes for all of them. So it's quite a competitive environment, and even the predators need to be on their toes. It's not only the antelope that need to be scared of predators, predators need to be scared of predators. Okie dokie folks, I hope that was a lovely ending to the Djuma part of the drive, and we're going to sit here a little bit longer, but thank you for joining us, and we're going to cross over to the Mara with Brent, and we'll see you this afternoon.
Well, we're still playing the patience game with the herd of zebra. This herd moved towards one of the crossing points. For a brief moment, I thought they might attempt to cross the murderous Mara River. But, alas, they decided not just yet, and moved back away from the edge again. But we will be playing a proper patience game today with these zebras. Now, it doesn't mean they're definitely going to cross. I do suspect they will cross, but it's going to take... It could take all day, actually, to be completely honest. We just don't know. That is the one thing you do have to have a lot of if you spend lots of time out in the African bushveld, and that is patience. Now, quite strange, a lot of people who meet me don't think I've got much patience at all. Well, with certain things, I don't have any patience whatsoever, to be honest. But when it comes to the whims of wildlife, I've got all the patience in the world. And fishing. I've got a lot of patience for fishing as well. Chitty Chatty Meg would like to know, do you have to get any vaccines to travel to Africa? It depends what part of Africa. So for Southern Africa, so South Africa, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Namibia, Southern Mozambique, you do not need to get any vaccine whatsoever. But if you move north in Africa, the most common vaccine you need to get is a yellow fever vaccine. Now, before you used to have to get it every couple of years. Now, the new yellow fever vaccine is said to last. I'm not 100% sure, so it's you don't need to get needles stuck into you that often. Now, of course, if you're going into other parts of Africa, no, I think it's just yellow fever is the most common one. Because I'm just trying to think. I've travelled into Congo, into Gabon, all just with my yellow fever certificate. The whole South African crew, I think, apart from me, James, because he came here the year before, and Jandre, but the majority of the crew had to get yellow fever certificates before coming up here. Luckily or unluckily, I've had a yellow fever certificate since I was about 7 or 8 years old. And I've always ended up traveling to areas where you need it. So I've had a few yellow fever injections over the years. Okay, so patience is key when waiting for zebras to leap into the jaws of crocodiles. So while we keep waiting, let's go to Jamie and find out whereabouts she is down south.
I am indeed down south. I'm not far away from where Brent found the old VW. The reason that I'm here is, of course, this is where apparently the cheetah were, or close to. Last time they were seen, they were outside of our signal area, but that doesn't mean that they're not around somewhere within signal today. So essentially what we're doing is trying to figure out where they've gone. Either of the two sisters, either of Kenya's two daughters could be around here. It's just a question of, well, where they might be. I find it very, very difficult to find female cheetah out here repeatedly, if that makes any sense. Malika's okay. Malika's pretty easy because there's 3 of them. She's got her 2 boys with her, and she's, for some reason, she tends to be a very commonly found cheetah. But finding Imani, Kenya's daughters, it proves to be quite difficult. when you're trying deliberately to look for them. It seems to only ever happen by accident, or when you get really, really lucky. And it's so, so, so quiet out here. I think that the reason that the female cheetah moved away from the salt lick is because there's a lioness denning over there. And I think that's caused them a little bit of anxiety. It makes sense. With cheetah cubs, they don't want them anywhere near a lioness. And while it's impossible for them to avoid a lion pride, that lioness will be coming back and forward. Anaconda was wanting to know, why do female animals live longer? Again, that is in general. Generally speaking, female animals live longer. There's a couple of reasons. One, a lot of research has been done, and in general, I think it's an evolutionary thing. Men's bodies are put through, or at least male bodies are put through a tremendous amount. There's a huge amount of testosterone, which causes a different approach to life within the male animals. So they live much rougher lives. And the larger they are, generally, there's a tendency to be more vulnerable to ailments. So if you look at human beings as well, on average, the life expectancy for a woman is higher than a man. And there just tends to be a slightly more resilience within a woman's body to certain ailments. Men are more prone to, as a general rule, life-threatening conditions as they get older. So you'll find that on average as well. But out here, it's also got a lot to do with the way that the male animals have to fight, the way that they go about defending a territory, whereas females tend to, as on a general level, be more peaceable. They have less conflict in their lives. So that's why it is a generalization, but you'll find life expectancy with almost all mammals will be lower for the males than it is for the females. You know, the male lions actually out here live such tough lives. Certainly in Kenya they've got some good medical aid, but they really do live rough and tumble existences. There's always the possibility of a group of young males coming in and displacing them, and they've got such a short period of time in which to pass on their own genetic material. It's a rough existence. Oh goodness, I wonder where these cheetah are. There's such a vast open space here, and we're about to run out of signal if we go down there. And we've got just us. So quiet out here, no one else is driving around. I hope we find something exciting to keep us occupied during the day. Although that fig tree is looking pretty lovely, I have to say. Don't you think that looks appealing, Manu? Maybe there's a cheetah under that fig tree. Or maybe that's a good place to go and stop and have our breakfast tea. And while we make our way towards what looks like the most extraordinary tree, let's go across to Brent, who has found his position for the day.
Well, we're still sitting alongside the beautiful Mara River, waiting patiently for the zebras to attempt to cross. And we're staying with the bigger group of zebras. And as I say, dribs and drabs have moved off towards Main North, Main South. I've got a feeling that these are the zebras I should be sitting with. And I generally trust my hunches. They normally work out quite well for me. Hi, Anna Marie. Anna Marie's wondering, have we seen any crowned eagles since being in the Mara? Anna Marie, actually, you've seen quite a few. but normally while we're in camp, actually, so they prefer to hang around the forests on the escarpment there, and we do see them around camp quite frequently, cruising on the edge of the escarpment. Oh, we can hear some hippos in the river downstream. Mac's wondering, what bird or reptile do I still want to see? Mac, I really want to see a really big python. And I've gone looking for the areas where, oh, there's a hippo, sunbathing in the water, where big python have been seen from time to time. But unluckily for me, I haven't managed to find one just yet. But I'm sure my time will come. Birds, oh, there's lots, Mac. Silverbird, which I know you see sometimes down around Purungat, which is where I'm heading down towards today, if the zebras decide to just keep milling about. Oh, there's just so many birds, Mac, it's almost too difficult to tell. And you never know what you're going to find, and that's the joy of being out here all the time. Very peaceful down by the river. Oh, there's the hippos after a hard night out grazing. I found some nice rocks to pop their chins on. Well, in one case, just using another hippo to pop his chin on. Very, very peaceful. Let's have a look upstream a bit. There's an Egyptian goose sitting on the rock at the rapids. Dean's wondering, are there any baby zebras around? Yes, Dean, a zebra give birth throughout the year, unlike some of the animals that are very seasonal. So there's always a baby zebra or two around. Here we go, Egyptian goose on the rock in the rapid. Probably a good spot to sunbathe. Very little can get to you there. An interesting question from Raz. Where else would I like to bring Safari Live? So many places, Raz. That's the truth of it. There's so many places. But I think one definitely for me would be northern Botswana. Whether it be Naipan in the desert or the Okavango, or the edges of the Okavango Delta, Savuti, Chobe. I think that's the spot that I would like to take Safari Live one day. Let's have a look. There's a croc with its mouth open, basking quite high up the bank. Here we go, look at that. You see that, there we go, a little bit to the right. Here we go with the mouth open. Now, crocodiles will do that once they get quite warm, letting cool air run over the blood vessels in their tongues. Now, in certain parts of Africa, spur-winged plovers have been known to pick bits of food out of a crocodile's teeth, but Here in the Mara, we haven't ever seen that. I've seen lots of spur-wing lapwings, but none of them ever trying to feed out of a crocodile's tooth. Judy says the water seems way too high for a crossing. Actually, Judy, the water's quite low at the moment compared to what it can be. I've seen it a lot higher than this in the past. So I'd say, and it's probably about the same level as 2-3 days ago where we had multiple crossings. Come on, let's go have a quick squiz up towards Main North and Main South. While these guys are just milling about. Now the zebra are not showing, they had that one lot of sort of little wander down to the one group sort of wandered down towards the edge, but then they turned around. Eddie Bailey's wondering, have we ever seen giraffe crossing the river? We have on the crossing cams. I haven't seen it physically, personally, but I have seen the clip of it. And we've had lions crossing the river, elephants crossing the river. Very not many Thompson's gazelle this year, which was quite strange because last year when James was up here, there were quite a few Thompson's gazelle crossings. There you go. Bye-bye, Topi. We're going to go see. The Topi cross the river throughout the year and regularly, up and down. Crossing on a drive. Yes, Kerry, there has. Actually, a few crossings on drives. Hello, babies. Aren't they cute, little Topis? All legs. Okay. Bye-bye, Topis. Maybe we will see you swimming a little later. So what I want to do is go check on that small group of zebra that moved away from the larger group towards the crossings. They look like they might have gone right up towards Main North. I think they might have spotted the Paradise Pride, and that might be the end of them crossing up there. So they might even come back down towards the Dusty and Picnic crossing this side. Carol says of having their mouth open. Well, maybe, Carol, then they just close their mouth and go into the water where it's a bit cooler. But they do have incredibly strong muscles in their jaw. I think they probably have the capability of also just locking their jaw in that position. So it doesn't take any effort to keep it open. No, it doesn't even look like they've moved to Main North. It looks like they've moved away from the river completely to go graze. Well, let's just go have a closer look at Main North. So it's going to be one of those really warm Mara days. Donna, interesting question. Do the hyena ever cross the river? Not that I'm aware of, Donna. I'm sure they do. but I think it would probably be a male who's leaving his natal clan and moving on to try find a new clan. I think the river works as a really effective natural clan boundary between the bigger clans. So I think possibly only males that are trying to sort of get into a new clan would cross. Oh, look at that. There we go. There's a few more lions than there were earlier. There's one up at the back. Well, there we go. Now, we can almost certainly rule out any crossings at Main South, because if you go to the right from that lioness arch into the shade, right next to the river, and that's the main point where the zebras come out when they cross, all the animals, there's a whole pile of lions, the Paradise Pride, in the shade there. That one's not as full-bellied as the one we saw earlier. But if I was a zebra, I'd take one look at the crocodiles, then see a whole heap of lions and go, heck no, I'm out of here. So the zebra that I came to check on are actually moving, as I said, away from the river. I think there's just too much risk between lions and crocodiles for them to cross up here. They might try cross at cul-de-sac crossing, but at the moment it doesn't look like they're heading that direction either. Okay, let's see if we can find some birds up ahead at Main North. But while we do that, Jamie has found a predator of her own.
I have. It's not the predator we were looking for, but it has spots and rather large ears and is looking really quite lovely, hidden in the grass like this. I actually had to go out and search for signal. I went all the way to that beautiful, beautiful fig that we didn't have signal there, so I really wanted to show you that stunning tree. But unfortunately, it was not to be. We'll still go there for our breakfast tea, but unfortunately we won't be able to share that moment with all of you. You'd think there'd be a leopard in there. There should be. But I've only once in my entire time guiding. Now, Rav, I didn't hear what Brent answered in response to this question, but you want to know, while we look at the extraordinary scenery, where else I would like to take Safari Live, where else we could go. It's always a difficult question if we have to only pick one. I think that India would be a truly extraordinary opportunity. The jaguars in South America. Wolves. Wolves would be amazing to watch live. Although I don't know how on earth we'd ever keep up with them. Ah, Brent said Botswana. Yes, oh, I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. I was thinking sort of outside of Africa. But I definitely agree with that. Botswana, most definitely. I think there's so many places that it would be amazing to have a live safari. And obviously, we want to give you as much variety as possible, but just imagine going to Namibia and watching the brown hyenas, hunting seals. We could actually follow their lives like we do the various animals that we see here. Or following a jaguar, or getting to know a pack of wolves, or filming polar bears live. So many options. So many options. Right now, I would like to take Safari Live to the female cheetah and her cubs, but I don't know where she is. Hi, Kevin. The mountains in the distance. You want to know if I've ever driven there? That's where we live. We live on the top of that mountain. I have been all the way along it, all the way as far south as I could possibly go to the Tanzanian border. So yes, I've driven up the mountains. I've been on the top of the mountain. We all went on a day trip the one day to, if I'm not mistaken, I think, let me just turn us around. I'll show you where we went to. We went and we stood on the top of a rock called Sands Rock. And I think that's it all the way over there. So I've pretty much driven everywhere we can go in the Mara. Pretty much. That's the rock. Oh gosh, how am I going to help you there, Manu? Yep, no, Manu's on it. There we go. That's the rock that we stood on top of and looked out across the plains of the Mara. So there we go. Took us much longer than we all expected to actually get there, driving all the way around. But we all went as a crew. And we climbed on the rock and we looked at the view. And Chandra, of course, given his tendency with feet, cut his foot jumping on the rock. And then David and Chandra gave us heart failure trying to take pictures of themselves jumping. There were moments where we simply could not watch them. We were also the subject of much interest. Oh, look, that's very pretty. Sorry, let's turn around quickly. Such a pretty view in front of our fig tree. So close and yet no signal there. But email. I'm not quite in time to get them right in front of the fig. She appears to be in a hurry. Spreading her wings in a quite flirtatious manner, but also at the same time cooling herself down a little bit, because it's gone from misty and cool to boiling in the space of a few minutes. There he goes, following along behind, receiving the message she's sending. Okay. So now we've got to figure out... Oh, goodness, yes. Very dramatic. Now we've got to figure out where the cheetah are hiding. We've got a whole day to do it in. And it's such a beautiful spot. Of course, the more interesting the terrain, the trickier it becomes for our signal. Random fact for the day from X-Ranger, which I did not know. Talking of a collective noun, because of course collective noun for a group of ostriches is a pride. But the collective noun for ladybirds is the loveliness of ladybirds. That's lovely. Thank you, X-Ranger. Kirsty sent that through, so we've learned something new today. A loveliness of ladybirds. An interesting history on why they were called ladybirds. Do you think I could remember it off the top of my head? It's something to do with the queen and crops and, oh goodness, it'll come back to me. The random pieces of information that one gathers at strange times of the day. I can't remember what it was. It was one of those quiz shows that we were watching. And one last look at the beautiful fig, because it is beautiful. And I keep wanting to take you underneath one of these fig trees, and I never can, because they're all just beyond the reach of our signal. Storm shelters I've discovered out here. Although there's always the slight terror that a branch is going to fall down upon you, because they do have such massive, massive limbs. And one day, there will be a leopard in that tree. Quite stunning. And thus, I suppose, that brings us to the end of our sunrise safari. So a big thank you to Manu for his wonderful camera work, as always. And, of course, to Alice and Kirsty in Final Control. We always love hearing your big Oscar acceptance type thank you speech. The most important thank you goes to all of you for joining us. Stay tuned for this afternoon's Sunset Safari and actually potential action broadcasts, because who knows what we're going to find.